Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, today we are going to discuss India's foreign policy. It's a vast topic, but we are not going to cover in details. We will just have an overview of Indian foreign policy in the past, and we'll come back to the contemporary times, how it is unfolding, especially after the change in the government in last parliamentary elections. So we'll see how the things will unfold and what are the challenges and opportunity ahead. So our focus area will be this. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in the studio Dr. Rajan Kumar. He teaches in Jawaharlal Nehru University, a prestigious university of the country, not only in the country, the world over it has its own place. And his specialization is foreign policy, international relations and research method. And Dr. Kumar has also written a book on India's relation with Russia, and number of articles has been written in different national and international journals. So certainly his knowledge and experience will help us to understand this topic and guide us how to understand this India's foreign policy in contemporary times. So on your behalf, I welcome him for the EduSet lecture on this very topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Amrinderji. And today's my topic given by Amrinderji is changing dynamics of India's foreign policy. First, we'll try to understand what are the different determinants of India's foreign policy. But before that, it's important to understand how do you locate India in the international scenario today. So we'll understand, I've structured my arguments first by placing India in the international situation. And after that, we'll go into the different dynamics of India's foreign policy. What are the determinants of India's foreign policy? What is the national interest? What has been the changes in India's foreign policy in the last say 60 years, but focus would be first on little bit of Nehru years, and after that I'll come to the contemporary times, which will cover broadly from 1990 till now. So I'll start with giving you a broad outline of India's foreign policy, locating it in the international context. It's important to understand that what is the contemporary international system, and as the slide which is there, you can see it. And that if you have to describe India's foreign policy, or if you have to describe India's position in the international system, so you need to understand what are the important powers in the international system and how India is placed in that power hierarchy that you have. If you have to describe international system today, so the international system can be understood as militarily unipolar and economically multipolar. What I mean by that is that US is the most important economic and military part today, but in terms of economy, you'll see that there are a number of countries which are emerging and which have gained an important share in the international economic structure. In terms of global economy, as the slide shows you here, and I'm taking the data from World Bank 2012 data, US covers nearly 18% of the global economy, which is like 16 trillion. So 18% is 18% contribution comes from the United States. The second important economic part is China, which is 15% of the global economy, and India is 6% of the global economy. Just one small qualifier, these percentages, what I showed you in the slide, this percentage is in terms of purchasing power parity, PPP. It's not in the constant price, but the purchasing power parity, which means that how much of, what is the value of your currency in the international market. And according to that, the GDP is calculated in terms of PPP. And according to that, 18% is US, China is 15%, India is 6%. And the second important constituent of any superpower, if you understand today's world, is the military spending. The amount of money spent by different countries on military. US is number one, which is a huge $640 billion in 2012. And that is followed by China, which is nearly $188 billion. Again, this is in terms of PPP. And India's spending is $47 billion. And that, if you compare India with China, China is $188 billion, while India is just $47 billion. So there is a huge difference. And if you compare China with the United States, so the gap is even wider. $650 or $640 billion, and China is just 188. India is less than $50 billion. And if you see Pakistan is less than $6 billion. So this is the kind of structure that you have, and this is the kind of amount of spending that is being done by the important countries in the world today, which matters for India today. And US is the hegemon, and NATO NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, as you know. So NATO is the most powerful military alliance today, and it has, as you know, that NATO is playing an important role in Iraq, is playing an important role in Afghanistan, of course, and several parts of the world. NATO has its presence, and and if you see the international structure, the way United States dominates the international structure today. So US dominates not through the military and economic power, it also dominates through the international institutions. For instance, you have the IMF, World Bank, G8 and United Nations organizations, and these are the organizations which came just after the World War II. So they reflect the realities of the World War II period, and they do not represent the today's reality. Today's reality is completely different, and as I'll show you in the next slide, that there's a gradual shift of power which is taking place from the Atlantic and Pacific to the Asian side, where the US is important, but European powers, which were very important in the 20th century, now Asian countries are becoming very important. And in the Asian countries, the important countries are which are emerging very fast and which are going to become very powerful in the next few years. China is, of course, number one. That is followed by India, which is number two in terms of economic power, and India's military is also very strong, as you know. And third is Japan, and then you have Korea and a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia. They are becoming powerful, and I'll show you in the next slide that how these countries are becoming important in the international political structure. The forthcoming world, please understand that there's a gradual shift of power, and the first shift of power took place in 16th and 17th century when Mediterranean countries, for instance Spain, Portugal, these were the leading countries of that century, and gradually what happened that it started shifting from Mediterranean to Atlantic, which means that the countries like United Kingdom, Great Britain, that became very important, and that was followed by countries like France, Germany and other countries. So these were the countries which became powerful with the first shift that took place in the 16th and 17th century. What is happening now, and which matters for India today, is the second shift, which is taking place from Atlantic to Asia Pacific in the 21st century. By 2025, out of 10 largest economies, 7 would be in Asia, and India would be one of them. India, China, Korea and other, Japan. So these will be the important countries of the 21st century. It's being said and there is almost a consensus that China will overtake United States in 25 years, and India will be the third largest economy. IMF, World Bank, United Nations, they do not represent the political distribution of power in the 21st century. So there is a gradual demand from these countries that these institutions should be reformed, and there should be a greater share of countries like India, Brazil and Nigeria and other countries which are not being represented in these institutions. And ideologically, China counters the prevailing international value system, where the liberal model of democracy, liberal models, understanding of rights. So these are the questions which are being challenged by China. So China represents a completely different kind of value system. And since China is going to play economically and militarily very important role in the international system, so that is going to define the 21st century that we are going to witness in the next 2 or 3 decades. So in that situation, what are the implications for India? What are the implications for the foreign policy of India that we need to locate and understand? What will the implications of this kind of shift that is taking place? The shift will result in a kind of, the US as a hegemon, the power of US is gradually declining. US is no longer the hegemon of the way it was in the post-World War II period. US is gradually declining, and China, since China is emerging, so US would like to contain China through forging some kind of alliance with the Asia Pacific powers like Japan and India and Korea, and Australia also included. So a new kind of power distribution is going to emerge in the next few decades that you're going to see. And second important thing which is very important for India, because India is deficient in that, is the energy sector. Energy, as you know, that energy plays a very important role in the modern industrialized world, and energy is going to play even energy is going to be very important, because the countries like huge countries like India and China, they are growing very fast and they do not have sufficient energy resources. as a result, they are going to grab the resources from the neighboring and the other regions. China is already having deals with the countries like Russia. Recently, nearly $400 billion deal was signed with Russia, and China is having its energy presence in Central Asia. China is signing deals in Latin America. China is signing deals in Africa. And since India is equally deficient in energy, we do not have sufficient energy, so we are also trying to strike deals with the country which are rich in energy. For instance, India has signed deals with Russia, Sakhalin projects and all. India has signed deals with Kazakhstan. India is also insisting for a deal with Iran, Turkmenistan, and of course the Gulf countries are very important because they are one of the major suppliers of the energy in today's world. So Gulf countries are very important for energy. But what I'm trying to say here is that the competition for energy is going to grow, and the countries which will play a major role in the decision of energy, the distribution of energy, the countries would be India, China, United States, and European Union, because they are the growing countries, they are the developed countries, and they are the ones who consume maximum energy. So that is what you're going to see in the next few years is some kind of competition between these countries or areas for energy resources. So energy is going to be very important in deciding the foreign policy of each and every country, and for India is very important. One of the issues for India when China is becoming powerful is some kind of a sense of anxiety that India has about China. China is very powerful militarily now and economically, of course, and that is causing a concern for India. I think the concern should not be the rise of China. The concern should be some kind of the assertiveness of China towards the border, whether it is on the issue of India-China border issues or in the issue of South China Sea, where India is having a friendly relation with countries like Vietnam, and these are the issues where the interest of India and China might clash in the future. And that's the reason India needs to reorient its foreign policy towards China and United States, because they are the ones who are going to redefine the regional politics or the regional security in the area which covers the Indian Ocean or which covers the Pacific region. And now I'll come back to a very interesting part. Now I'm moving from locating India's in the international political situation or international political structure to the domestic factors which influence the foreign policy. So as I said you that I'll be discussing two parts. One was the international factors which play important role in deciding the foreign policy of India, and the second is the domestic factor. And if you need to understand the factor which influence the foreign policy of any country, I think the first thing which comes into anybody's mind is the national interest. So every country has a national interest, and the national interest, how do you define national interest? That's the issue when you discuss the foreign policy of any country. National interest can broadly be understood in terms of economy, the economic requirement of a country. It can broadly be understood in terms of security, what are the security interests of that nation. It can also be understood in terms of its search for strategic autonomy, that how every country is trying for some kind of independence in foreign policy, some kind of influence in the foreign policy. So strategic autonomy is very important. Other factor which plays very important role in the case of India is the global economic integration. That how, since India is trying to integrate with the global economy gradually, and the process started long back, but it got its pace in 1990s when the Indian economy was liberalized, and after that Indian economy started connecting very fast with the United States economy, with the European economy, even with the Chinese and other economies. So there is a gradual economic integration taking place of Indian economy with the external economies, and that is something which determines the foreign policy of today. One other factor to understand the national interest of India is that the aspiration that India has that to become the what you call superpower, or in other words to play an important role in international politics. As you know that every fifth person in the globe is Indian. So India should play a much more important role in international political structure, whether it's international institutions or economic decision making. So in all these factors, India should play a very important role. And so summing up the argument of what constitutes national interest of India, you have to understand the security. Security will cover external security. External security, I mean that You have, as you know, that India is almost a target of terrorist attacks emanating from Pakistan and Afghanistan. So how can we contain those kind of threats for India's security? And India also had border conflicts with China in 1962, and with Pakistan, India has fought 3 wars. So the external security becomes very important for India, and so terrorism as well as border issues, they need to be resolved for India to have a very conducive economic growth. So external security is very important. Second, as I already reflected upon a little bit, was the energy security. So energy security is another important constituent which plays a very important role in deciding what is the national interest. And third is the human security. And human security, because in today's world, as you know, that migration is becoming very important. We have migration issues with Bangladesh, for instance. Very recently, we had conflicts with Bangladesh on the issue of migration, and we have this migration issues coming from Nepal. Then you have from Sri Lanka and other places, and then we have Indian diaspora in the other countries. So these all constitute the issues which will which can broadly be understood in the generic term called human security. So that also becomes important determinants of India's national interest. And finally, the food security. In the initial years of India's independence, the food security was an important issue, that India was not having sufficient production to feed its own population. As a result, India had to import wheat from United States and other places. Food security constitutes an important part of India's dealing with many of the countries, because agriculture, export and import is very important in the determination of India's foreign policy. So as a result, these are the broader security issues which are important. I'll just repeat again: external security, energy security, human security and food security. The second thing which is important in determining India's foreign policy is what you call strategic autonomy. What do I mean by that? What I understand by this is that India should not be pressurized, or India should not become a part of any alliance where India's foreign policy is aligned to the interest of some other country. What I mean is that India should have an independent strategic foreign policy where India does not become a subordinate ally of any second country. And for that, strategic autonomy is not possible unless until you have a good amount of economic development and some kind of military also. During the Nehru years, as you know, that the policy of NAM, non-alignment movement, the policy of NAM basically was to attain the strategic autonomy of India, and through that strategic autonomy of not only India but other countries which were developing after the colonial period. Countries like Ghana, countries like Indonesia, countries like Iran, Turkey, etc. So these were the issues which are very important during the Nehru years, and gradually that strategic autonomy concept became very popular, and it still plays a very important role in shaping the foreign policy of India, where we always argue that India should maintain its strategic autonomy. Now the third factor again is the global integration, because India needs FDI. India has a trade now which constitutes nearly 30% of the GDP of India. So trade is becoming important, and India cannot remain isolated. India is already integrated with the most part of the world, and to promote trade, technology, and India needs FDI, foreign direct investment, to develop its infrastructure, to develop its industry. For that reason, the integration of India with the global world becomes very important. So that is another aspect, economic aspect, which plays a very important role in shaping up the foreign policy of India. Fourth is, as I told you, that India is not playing the role that it should be playing in the global politics. Why? Mostly because most of the international institutions today are dominated by countries like most of the Western countries, Western developed countries like United States, United Kingdom, then France, Germany, China, to an extent Japan, or the G8 countries where India does not have representation. As a result, India should be playing much more important role in the international institutions as well as economic forums like IMF and the World Bank. Since that is not happening, so one of the important parameters for India in the next few years would be to play an important role in these institutions, and that requires some kind of opening up of these institutions so that India gets a more important place in these international institutions. Now, briefly, I'll take you, because the topic is changing dynamics of India's foreign policy. So briefly, we'll understand that what were the foreign policy motivations or the guiding philosophy just after the independence, just after 1947, when Nehru was the Prime Minister, and those philosophy and guidelines or the principles, they still shape the foreign policy of India in a way. And there is always a debate that whether we should continue with those philosophies or we should try to revise some of the philosophies that were there in the earlier period. But as you will see that gradually the Indian foreign policy has evolved. And please understand that even the national interest, which we call sometimes to be static, national interest is not static. National interest is always in response to the changing international context, to the changing global and the regional context. So your national interest, what you consider to be the most important factor, maybe some other factors become important in the next few years. So national interest, as defined by the Nehru years, they have gradually evolved over the time, and the major shift took place in the 1990s. But before I go into those things, what the developments of 1990s, I would like to explain some of the basic parameters of India's foreign policy during the Nehru years. I think the first important thing to remember is the non-alignment movement. Non-alignment movement was a response, India's response to the division which was there in the global politics between United States, which constituted the leader of one bloc, and the Soviet Union, which was the leader of the other bloc. And there was a tussle between these two blocs, and in that situation it was very difficult for a newly emerged country like India to maintain some kind of strategic autonomy. As a result, India, along with Indonesia, Ghana, many other developing countries, they formed an organization, which came to be known as non-alignment movement. And for economic cooperation, they also formed this G77, where some of the economic issues of the developing countries were discussed, so that they do not come under pressure of the two blocs which were there during the Cold War period. The second principle, which was given by Nehru and which became the guiding principles of India's foreign policy, is the concept known as Panchsheel. And Panchsheel refers to the 5 principles that India adopted as a guideline for India's foreign policy with the neighbors and beyond. This included non-interference, non-aggression, peaceful coexistence, respect of sovereignty, and respect for sovereignty. So these were the 5 guiding principles of Panchsheel, which was developed by Nehru to orient the foreign policy of India during the early years. India in the initial years played a very important role in uniting the third world countries, in uniting the developing world to have some kind of autonomy from the two blocs that you had during the Cold War period. And India supported the anti-colonial movements which were going on in various countries during that period, and that became one of the reasons why India became the leader of the third world countries through NAM or in G77 or in other international forums. India in the 1960s also asked for nuclear-free world, that there was some kind of monopoly where a few powers had the nuclear armaments, while the rest of the countries were not. And as you know that nuclear armaments are considered to be dangerous for the human civilization. So India was the first country in 1960 to ask for nuclear-free world. But as you will see in the 1990s, that policy changed, because there was some kind of gradual realization that the world is not going to be free of nuclear weapons. The countries which have nuclear weapons, they are not going to dismantle their nuclear armaments. As a result, there is a gradual shift in India's foreign policy towards the nuclear armament. And in 1998, when you had this nuclear blast during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Prime Minister's period, after that there was a gradual shift in India's nuclear policy, and India became one of the nuclear power. Gradually it was accepted by the international community and the world forums as a nuclear power. So gradually there is a change in the policy, and that I'll discuss again later in my presentation today. Now I'll gradually come to India's foreign policy under the new government. As you know that that BJP with its coalition party NDA has come to power in India. The Prime Minister Modi has become has the largest support of the largest BJP is the single largest party, and in Parliament you have the BJP and its coalition which constitute majority of the seats, and so there's a kind of debate that the BJP will try to bring in some completely new kind of policy, while the others argue that given the domestic and international constraints that BJP will have, it's difficult to have a completely new foreign policy, and they argue that there will be more continuities than changes. So there are two contrasting arguments. One group will argue that there will be a sea change in the foreign policy of India because of BJP's position on security, BJP's orientation towards economic reforms, and its ideological motivations. So some argue that because of these factors, BJP will completely have a new foreign policy, while the other scholars they argue that because of the domestic and international constraints, it's not possible to have a completely new foreign policy. What is going to happen, there will be more continuities than changes. So we'll go into the details and we'll see how India's foreign policy is going to shape up in the next few years. But to understand the new government's policy, I think the starting point for any scholar or any student would be to look at the manifesto, that what the BJP had in its manifesto related to the issues of foreign policy. If you see the BJP's manifesto, which was presented just before the election, so BJP manifesto includes a few important things. One is the nation first and universal brotherhood. But this is like all the manifesto, they'll have this kind of policy where the nation is first. Everybody knows that nation is first, and it will promote the policy of universal brotherhood. One important thing in the BJP's manifesto is brand India with 5 T's. Brand India, they would like to promote the notion of brand India with 5 T's, which includes tradition, talent, tourism, trade, and technology. One important part of India's BJP's manifesto is they have clearly said that they'll have closer cooperation with regional and different multilateral organizations like BRICS, where you have Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa; SAARC, which is the Association of South Asian Countries; and ASEAN, which is Association of Southeast Asian States. India has said clearly that, and BJP has said very clearly in manifesto that India will have closer cooperation with all these multilateral organizations. And one of the aspirations that BJP has, basically it reflects the aspirations of the Indian middle class, that India should have a rightful place in the world, which means that there's some kind of sense of there's some kind of aspirations among the middle class that India is not playing the role that it should be playing in the international institutions and in the international power structure. So BJP has reflected that in this manifesto, and it says that a resurgent India must get rightful place in the world. Another issue which was again mentioned in the manifesto of BJP, that persecuted Hindus can get refuge in India. And it clearly said that any Hindu who is persecuted, that person would get a place, a refuge in India. But this issue became a little controversial, where critics argue that the term should not be Hindu, term should be Indian. Any Indian persecuted outside should be given refuge in India. So these are the broader issues which are related to foreign policy, which are there in the BJP's manifesto. But please understand that manifesto is just a guiding line. It just tells you what are the major indicators of, or what are the guiding principles of India's foreign policy. But as they say it, the devil lies in the details. So we need to look into the details of the way the India's foreign policy is going to shape up in the next say in the period of the BJP and a little further. I think you need to understand 3 crucial factors which will determine the foreign policy of India. One is the economic priorities. As you know that in today's world, India needs to grow so that it can provide employment to its people, so that it can have a better trade with other countries, so that it can attract some investment and FDI, foreign direct investment from other countries and some technology, sophisticated technology from other countries. And BJP has clearly indicated that economic priorities would be the first thing that it is going to follow in terms of its foreign policy orientations. The second factor which is important for India is the security factor. In the security factor, two important issues are, one is the issue of terrorism, and the second is the border issues. As you know that India has border conflicts or border problems with countries like Pakistan and China, and a little bit of Bangladesh as well. So India needs to resolve the issue of terrorism, issue of border issues with Pakistan as well as China. So the focus of the present government is likely to be on either maintaining the status quo on the, at the borders, or trying to resolve it, or what probably they would do is that focus on issues which are not controversial. For instance, trade with China is growing, and it's not a controversial issue as such. Trade with Pakistan can also grow if both India and Pakistan decide to give most favorable nation MFN status to its country. So that is going to be the focus of the government in the next few years. And as India will grow economically, it's likely to play much important role in the international institutions as well, whether it's United Nations or BRICS or IMF or the World Bank. India will ask for much more important role in these institutions. So these are the broader factors which will help you understand the India's foreign policy in the next few years. Now I'm coming back one by one to these three factors: economic, security, and aspirational factors. So among the economic factors, what is important for India is to attract FDI from the developed world, FDI from developed world for infrastructure and industrial growth. As you know that we need resources, we need capital from the developing world, so that we can develop our infrastructure, road, railway, power sector, nuclear sector, energy sector. So we need to have the infrastructure so that industrial growth takes place. Further, we need technology. We have good technologies in several sectors, but again we need technology in several other sectors. For that, India need to attract FDI in various sectors. Trade, as I referred to in the beginning, that trade constitutes nearly 30% of India's GDP, and India is linked to the world, which plays a very important role in the domestic economic growth of India. So India would like to grow its trade with several countries, developed as well as other countries, and India would also like to diversify its trade with some of the countries which are left out, whether it's Africa, whether it's Central Asia or Southeast Asia. So India would like to intensify trade with these regions. In terms of trade, China is the biggest trading partner of India. The trade with China is more than $70 billion today. It's very strange that with China we have a very unique kind of relationship. In terms of economic cooperation, we have a very good relationship with China, where the trade is prospering between India and China. The trade, as I told you, is nearly 80 billion, and China is the biggest trading partner of India. But on the issues of border and Tibet, we have certain issues. So China's the relation with India is both competitive and cooperative. We are competing on the border issues, but at the same time we have a very cooperative economic relationship with China, and it's going to grow further in the next few years. And Prime Minister Modi is supposed to have a very good relation with Chinese leadership. So if they can maintain the status quo on the borders, and if they can cooperate further on economic issues, the trade between India and China is going to grow. And the second important country in terms of trade is United States. And with United States, which used to be at one point of time, used to be in the early, just 10 years back or even before that, US used to be the biggest trading partner of India. But now it has been taken over by China. The trade with the US is nearly $45 billion. And their target to achieve more. But US is very important for security reasons. US is also important for technology reasons and investment, because majority of investment in the technology, higher technology now is coming from United States. And US plays a role in different international institutions. So India's relation with US is very important. With China, the problem in terms of trade is the balance of trade issue, where there is a trade deficit. There is a deficit in terms of export and import. China is exporting much more than India is exporting to China. So as a result, there is a deficit, balance of payment deficit, where the deficit is nearly $40 billion, and in the next few years, India will try to enhance its export, try to increase its export, so that this the deficit that India has with China, that can be bridged up. And Indian leaders are very aware of this, and they are going to deal with whenever they have a meeting with China on economic issues. The other countries which are going to be very important for India in the next few years, one is of course US and China, as we discussed. Japan is going to be very important for security as well as economic reasons. Japan, technologically Japan is very advanced, and Japanese investment has been very high in India in the last 30 years or so, and for security reasons, because China is something that we have a very competitive relation with China, but that is not the case with Japan. With Japan, India has a very cordial relationship most of the time, except a few years when because after the nuclear test in India, some kind of sanction was imposed by Japan. But gradually, both the countries have overcome this kind of the irritants, and Japan is going to play a very important role, because of the convergence of issues, convergence of interest in terms of security, and convergence of economic interest. And Prime Minister Modi is supposed to be in very good terms with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and they have a very cordial relationship, and that is going to play a very important role in having a very improved relationship with Japan in the next few years. The other countries, the European Union as a bloc, European Union is very important for India. As a bloc, is again one of the highest trading partner of India. So India would like to have a good good economic cooperation with European countries. Russia is going to be important for India because Russia is the largest supplier of arms and weapons to India. In Navy and in the Air Force, the Indian dependence on Russia is almost 70%, which means that India imports most of its armament from Russia. And they have joint exercises, and they have a very developed framework of cooperation. Every year there is a summit meeting between the two Prime Minister of India and the President of Russia. So Russia is going to be very important for India in the next few years. So Russia, United States, European Union, and the Gulf states, they are going to be important. Gulf states are very important for India because of the energy factor, and we have a huge diaspora in the Gulf regions. Indian diaspora from all over India, they are in Gulf regions. And the remittances which come from the Gulf region, that plays a very important role in the reserves that we have in India, and it brings out capital to India. So Gulf regions are very important for diasporic factors and for the energy factors, because most of the energy supplies are from the Gulf regions. So that is going to be important for India in the next few years. And Indian leadership would like to have a very good relationship with the Gulf countries. The economic policies that we have, economic policies of the present government is the neoliberal policies, where it would like to promote privatization, deregulation, reforming the labor laws, and easy land acquisition. So the neoliberal policies will require a closer integration with the global economy, with the global capital, and as a result, we will see a favorable policy towards the global capital. BJP is known for cutting down bureaucratic hurdles, so it will promote trade, it will promote investment, it will promote technology transfer, and the government has already declared that it will have 100% FDI in the defense sector. This is something which is completely new. The FDI in the defense sector was limited to a certain percentage, but now is planning to have a greater investment in the FDI in the defense sector. Then again, the government is planning to disinvest some of the railways. Railways till now is completely controlled by the government. It's a public sector enterprise. But now the government is planning to disinvest in the railways. So that will attract a lot of investment from countries like Japan, China, France, Germany. And gradually the government sector enterprises will be opened up for the investment from the external players. One issue which is controversial and where India is not going to open up is the FDI in retail. Because of opposition from the traders, the small shopkeepers and the small traders, BJP has announced that it will not have FDI in the retail sector. So the big retail companies like Walmart or the Carrefour, they are not going to come in India in the next few years if the BJP follows this and the promises it made in the manifesto. Now I've discussed the economic issues. Now I'm coming back to the security issues. What are the India's security issues with the neighboring states and the other states? I think when security comes to your mind, the first thing which we refer to is Pakistan. And what are the factors where we have conflict with Pakistan? I'll use the term acronym. The acronym is TAJ, T-A-J. TAJ is the acronym. T refers to the issue of terrorism. A refers to the issue of Afghanistan, where Pakistan plays an important role, and India is also becoming very active. And J is the issue of Jammu and Kashmir and the border issues that you have with Pakistan. So these are the three issues which are very important for India in dealing with Pakistan, because the terrorism is mostly emanating from either is Pakistan or Afghanistan, and Pak region, which broadly refers to region where the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan meets. So in that region, the Taliban are very important, and Taliban are also Taliban, Al Qaeda, and there are several terrorist groups which are emanating from that region. And issue of terrorism is a very important factor for India's relation with Pakistan. India and Pakistan cannot improve its relation unless until this issue of terrorism is solved, because terrorists have a vested interest in destabilizing India's relation with Pakistan. You'll see that whenever there is a dialogue between India and Pakistan, the terrorists would like to create a very tense atmosphere by terrorist attack. So whenever we have a summit meeting between the Indian and the Pakistani Prime Minister, that would be preceded by a terrorist attack. The purpose is basically to kind of destabilize the dialogue which might take place. The purpose is to create a tension between India and Pakistan. So we need to understand, both India and Pakistan needs to understand, they need to understand that the issue of terrorism should not be a factor in, should not be an issue where the dialogue is broken down between these two countries. So dialogue must continue, and terrorism has to be contained. Pakistani government and especially the army of Pakistan must play a very important role in containing the terrorists which are there in Pakistan and Afghanistan region. And so the issue of terrorism is one thing which will create some kind of concern between these two states, and Indian government must pressurize the Pakistani government, or must have the trust of Pakistani government so that terrorist activities are contained. The second issue for India and Pakistan is going to be the issue of Afghanistan. As you know that Afghanistan was under the Taliban control. After that, US came. US is planning to withdraw by the end of this year and by 2016 completely. So after that, the situation is going to be very difficult in Afghanistan. There is an election already, but the terrorists are still they still wield power in Afghanistan. They still play a very important role in creating an environment of tension or insecurity in Afghanistan, and they are still very powerful. The US has not been able to contain the terrorist activities in Afghanistan. Once US goes from Afghanistan, the problem, some of the scholars fear that the target is going to be India. And in that kind of situation, it's going to be very difficult for the regional stability that we expect in the region. And for economic growth, for conducive economic growth, the peaceful environment is very important for a country like India. So we need to have a policy, a very clear policy towards Afghanistan, where the terrorist activities are contained. We need the support of Pakistan. We need the support of other countries through which we can control the terrorist activities which target India. And in Afghanistan, there is an economic investment that India has undertaken. India has invested nearly $2 billion in Afghanistan. They have constructed a road in the south Afghanistan, and they have also constructed hospitals and other infrastructure, power plants and other infrastructure projects for Afghanistan. And India has played a very important role in capacity building in Afghanistan. Some of the NGOs are very active in Afghanistan. So India is very acting very closely to the Afghan government, and that is something which is not liked by Pakistan. Pakistan would not like to have the Indian presence in Afghanistan. They believe that probably India can play a much more important role in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, and that can be difficult for Pakistan. But India and Pakistan needs to understand that that the India's role is much more for creating a stable region in Afghanistan, for development of Afghanistan, rather than targeting any country. And both India, Pakistan and Afghanistan, they need to sort out some of the issues which are emanating out of the absence of information that these countries have, and they turn suspicious towards each other. So Afghanistan is one factor which will remain the focus of the BJP government or the NDA government in the next few years. Jammu and Kashmir, we have the border issues with Pakistan. We have fought 3 wars with Pakistan, but even that has not solved the problem. So as we know that fighting a war will never solve the problem. It only creates a further problem rather than solving the problem. So we need to, on the issue of the LOC, on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, where in Jammu and Kashmir there are some infiltrations taking place from through Pakistan, and they're supporting the militant activities and the terrorist activities in Jammu and Kashmir and other regions. So that needs to be stopped for a conducive development of India and Pakistan. India and Pakistan cannot prosper. India and Pakistan cannot provide employment to millions of its unemployed youth unless and until they have a very conducive economic environment. And for that, it's very important that the status quo in Jammu and Kashmir is maintained, and India does not, a status quo is maintained, and India and Pakistan have try to develop some kind of cordial relationship. At least the status quo on the border should be maintained. The 2 armies need to cooperate with each other so that some kind of cordial atmosphere is created on the borders. So these 3 factors are going to be important focus of the BJP government in the next few years. And just I'm showing as you know that the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, was invited and during the swearing-in ceremony of Modi and Sharif, they met, and it was a very good beginning by the government. It was a very welcome retreat from the hardline policies, and where they understood that they need to have a dialogue. The dialogue must continue between India and Pakistan. And what are the issues that needs to be resolved between India and Pakistan? One is, of course, that the terrorist activities, they need to be contained. We need to have the multi-track diplomacy, which is there between India and Pakistan. They must continue. We need to enhance the economic cooperation between these 2 states. SAARC, which is a regional forum of South Asian states, SAARC must play a very active role in resolving the issues of India and Pakistan, and with India and Bangladesh and other regional issues which are there between the SAARC countries. The information exchange between the 2 armies, because many a times the firing take place on the border because of misunderstanding between the 2 armies. So that there must be exchange of information where the 2 armies deal with each other. And we have to understand that the stability of Pakistan is crucial for India, because if Pakistan is not stable, Pakistan works like a buffer state for India, because on the one hand we have Iran, and on the other side we have Afghanistan. If Pakistan is stable and if Pakistan is prosperous, so Pakistan can work as a buffer for India, and stability in Pakistan is very important for India. And now I'm coming to the second security issue, which is the issue with China. With China, we have different issues, and I've used the acronym TAB. So how can we have TAB? How can we solve the issue related to TAB? T refers to the issue of Tibet, A refers to Arunachal Pradesh and the visa issues, and B refers to the border issues that we have with China. So as you know that the Tibet issue is an issue of conflict between India and China, and since Tibetan refugees are here in Dharamshala in India, Himachal Pradesh in India, and China would always like India to send them back to Tibet, and which is not possible because of the various political and other reasons. So Tibet has an issue of concern between India and China. Second is the Arunachal Pradesh, where Chinese have a staked claim that Arunachal Pradesh was a part of China, which is which again is Arunachal Pradesh is, as you know, is a part of India, and is the claim of China. I think that does not stand any merit. Arunachal Pradesh has traditionally and historically been part of India, and the visa issues which has been created by China, that whenever someone goes from Arunachal Pradesh to China, whenever they want to visit from Arunachal Pradesh to China, China would issue either they'll not issue the visa, or they'll issue a very special kind of visa. So both India and China, they need to resolve the issue of Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of India, and it's going to be so. But I think the China is probably trying to play a role where it's trying to link that issue with the issue of Tibet. So that's the kind of politics which is being played between the two countries, and they need to maintain the status quo so that there is no escalation of conflict between these two issues, these two countries on the issue of border in the eastern sector. One good thing between India and China is that there no direct military confrontation has taken place in the last 30 years. In the last 30 years, there has been no military firing on the border, which is very strange, or which is very remarkable in comparison to when we see the border between India and Pakistan. In India and Pakistan border, we always have conflicts, we always have exchange of fires between the two armies, but in the case of China, there is no exchange of fire, and we have both India and China have developed mechanism through which, despite some kind of claims of infiltration, they maintain the status quo, and they do not have any kind of fighting between the two armies. BJP, with its majority support in Lok Sabha, is in a very good position to solve some of the issues with China, and since economy is growing, and since there is a huge economic cooperation between the two states, there is a very conducive environment for resolving some of the border issues with China. There is no possibility. Let me tell you very clearly that there is no possibility of war with China. India and China have developed some kind of framework, institutional framework, where they have dialogue mechanism between the armies, between the political leadership, between the academics and other people. So the institutional mechanism is gradually growing between India and China, and there is no, as far as I can see, there is no possibility of war. And both the countries, it's in the interest of both India and China to develop a more cooperative economic cooperation rather than competitive issue. They can maintain the status quo, they can maintain the absence of conflict on the border, and that will create a very conducive environment for the prosperity and economic trade between the two states. I have some slide here, and the slide is about disputed Sino-Indian borders. If you can see the northern sector where we have Kashmir, some part of Kashmir has been gifted by Pakistan to China, and that's an issue of dispute because India, this was according to the Indian government, Indian leadership, this was part of India's map, but since this was gifted by Pakistan to China, and that is one issue of conflict which involves Pakistan, India, and China. And there's a huge border in Jammu and Kashmir, especially the northwestern part of the border of Jammu and Kashmir. And the second we have in the eastern sector. In the eastern sector, we have the border of Arunachal Pradesh. That is something which is claimed by China, but that is an integral part of India, and that will remain the integral part of India. And there is unlikely there is going to be any change in the status quo. The problem with the government is that that whether they should convert the LOC into the real line of border between the two states. I think that is something which the strong leadership has to decide, and BJP with its majority can play a very important role in taking some of the tough decisions which will influence the course of development in India and China. I think in South Asia is a very important, and the BJP has clearly said in its policy that India will develop a very strong relationship with the neighboring countries. Pakistan I have already discussed, Afghanistan I have already discussed, and we have seen that how economic factors are now important. India's investment of $2 billion is important, and for security reasons Afghanistan is very important for India, and Afghanistan is a member of SAARC also. So Afghanistan will play a very important role in the next few years, especially in terms of regional stability in the South Asian region. Bangladesh, we had certain issues with Bangladesh, especially the river issues and the water issues, and the issue of migration, because migration takes place from Bangladesh to many of the northeastern states, and that creates some kind of tension in the region. Recently, there was some conflict in Assam because of the migration issues, where migrants from Bangladesh had come and they had settled down, and the local people conflicted with the Bangladesh migrants. So that is one issue which needs to be sorted out with Bangladesh. With Nepal, Bhutan and Maldives, we have by and large cordial kind of relationship, and we can improve the relationship with Nepal, and some of the issues which are there related to trade and migration, etc., that can be sorted out. The one important thing to understand in the case of the South Asian continent is the issue of SAARC. SAARC is the regional organization, but because of the conflict between India and Pakistan and because of the other issues, and India is such a huge country that it always creates some kind of suspicion in the mind of neighboring small countries. So India needs to play a very active role, and India need to gain the trust of smaller neighbors, and India should make SAARC a very important regional organization. India and USA is, as you know, is very important for India, and during the Cold War periods, USA was much more closer to Pakistan than it was to India. So that created a kind of very distant relationship between India and the United States. Dennis Cox, who is the scholar, he used a phrase called estranged democracy, which means that both the countries are democracy, but they are still far apart. So, but gradually after the 1990s, what we see is that there is a gradual convergence of regional and global security interest. In Afghanistan, India and US is acting together on the issue of terrorism. India and United States, they're acting together, and they're likely to have intensified relationship. They also want stability in the Indian Ocean, and for the maritime security, these India and United States can cooperate. India should not be the subordinate partner of United States, but at the same time, because of economic reasons, because of security reasons, India has to have a very close relationship with the United States. In 2008, as you know, that civil nuclear deal was signed between the two states, India and US signed, and after that some kind of transfer of technology is likely to happen from United States to India. The famous talks, what we know in the international politics as Jaswant Talbot talk. Jaswant Singh was the Minister of External Affairs for India during that period, and they developed a very friendly and trustworthy relationship, and after that Manmohan Singh continued that relationship, and during Manmohan Singh's government, the civil nuclear deal agreement was signed in 2008, and after that some kind of transfer of nuclear technology is likely to take place in the next few years in India. The trade investment that plays a very important role when it comes to India's relation with the United States. US is the second trading partner of India after China, and India needs technology in advanced technology for industrial growth, for infrastructural growth, and for that US will play a very important role in the next few years, and especially BJP's relation has been cordial with the United States in general. And defense cooperation is again one issue. In the Cold War periods, United States was not very close in terms of defense cooperation because India was considered to be closer to the Soviet Union, and that was the reason why India was distant from United States. But in the post-Cold War period, the situation is completely different. India and US are having joint military exercises. There's now military technology transfer which might take place between these two states. So in terms of security also, India and US would be closer. There's one issue which comes into my mind, or which comes into mind of any Indian citizen, on the issue of the visa issues, for the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I think US will sort this out because it's in the interest of US to sort this issue as far as possible. US is feeling humiliated now at the moment because the Prime Minister was denied visa in 2005, and that status continued for some time. But now US does not have a choice because of its economic factors, because of geopolitical and security interest. I think very soon the United States is going to resolve this issue, the issue of visa with the Indian Prime Minister. India and Russia, again, India is dependent on Russia. 70% of its armament in several in Indian Air Force and in the Navy that comes from Russia. So for that reason, India is going to have a closer cooperation with Russia, and investment in nuclear, as you know, that Kudankulam the two Kurnakulam projects in Tamil Nadu, they are being supported by Russia, and there are two further which are going to come in the same place. So India will have a very intensive nuclear cooperation with Russia in the next few years. Then it will also cooperate in international organizations like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. That is going to be stronger, and India will cooperate with Russia in BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And there is a historic goodwill between these two states, and that is going to continue in the next few years. Finally, India will play a very important role in the multilateral institutions, especially SAARC, BRICS, ASEAN, and Shanghai Cooperation Organizations. And one of the issues which is going to come up in India's discussion with several important countries is the issue of Security Council, that India should become the member of United Nations Security Council, and that is going to be taken up by the BJP government in the next few years. Finally, my conclusion, what would be the major focus of India's foreign policy? I think economy is the first priority of the BJP government, and they would like to have a further economic integration of India with the developed world and with other countries also. India would like to create a conducive environment in the neighborhood. In the absence of the security conflicts, or in the absence of the security clashes, the economy will grow, and that is going to be one of the important priorities of the BJP government. Finally, the terrorism which emanates from Afghanistan and Pakistan region, that is going to be an issue of concern for India's foreign policy in the next few years, and India will have a high cooperation with the United States, China, Japan, Israel, and Russia. So with this, I come to the conclusion of my presentation. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much.
Okay. And well, friends, with this word we conclude the lecture, and this was just highlights of what we are going to have in coming years with BJP government and we can say NDA government, right, because that is the right to framework.
That's true.
So with this word, friends, I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on behalf I thank Dr. Rajan Kumar for giving such an insightful lecture on this very topic. Thank you very much.